Most people assume the English and Irish share almost identical origins, neighbouring islands, intertwined histories, Celtic roots. But the real story is far stranger. DNA reveals that England became one of Europe's most genetically blended crossroads, while Ireland formed a closed genetic enclave. This genetic split was not fate, it was the consequence of invasions, isolation, and geography shaping bloodlines for thousands of years. Your understanding of ancestry is about to change. How did two places so close on a map become so different in the blood? Long before the names England or Ireland meant anything, the land itself was empty, shaped by the slow retreat of ice. Around 9000 BCE, as glaciers melted and forests crept north, small bands of Western hunter-gatherers moved in. They tracked herds through wild valleys, left flint blades in riverbeds, and painted their presence in the DNA of future generations. Their legacy stretches from the limestone caves of the Burren to the chalk hills of southern Britain, a genetic thread running through both islands. About 5,000 years later, a new chapter began. Around 4000 BCE, early farmers crossed the sea from continental Europe, bringing sheep, cattle, barley, and wheat. They carried polished stone axes and a different way of life, settling the land in clusters and clearing forests for fields. Their arrival did not erase the hunter-gatherers, but it changed everything. The two groups mixed, sometimes peacefully, sometimes not, leaving traces in burial mounds from County Meath to Wiltshire. The bones of these Neolithic farmers, buried beneath passage tombs and long barrows, still hold echoes of their journey. Their DNA remains woven into the fabric of both English and Irish populations, a silent record of migration and mingling. Then, around 2500 BCE, the Beaker people arrived. They came from the continent, carrying metalworking skills, new pottery styles, and a distinctive Y chromosome marker called R1b L21. This marker would become especially common in Ireland, but it appears on both sides of the Irish Sea. The Beaker migration did not wipe away what came before. Instead, it layered over the earlier populations, blending with hunter-gatherers and farmers alike. Their influence set the stage for the Bronze Age, when stone circles rose and gold flowed in trade between the islands. At this point, the genetic story on both islands is remarkably similar. Three ancient layers, hunter-gatherers, early farmers, and Beaker migrants, form the backbone of ancestry in both England and Ireland. The same migrations, the same ancient bones, the same blend of bloodlines. This shared foundation is the common past, built from waves of people who never knew the names of the lands they shaped. The centuries ahead would bring new forces and new divisions, but for now, the story is one. By the way, my name is Patrick, owner of Northborn. If you like the sort of content I'm creating here and want to learn more about our ancestry, please go and hit that subscribe button. It helps out a lot. Thanks, and take care. The land itself began to decide who would enter and who would be left behind. In 43 AD, Roman legions crossed the Channel and built a web of roads, towns, and forts across southern Britain. Londinium, Iberacum, and Bath rose from the mud, each a new centre that drew merchants, soldiers, and settlers from across the empire. Markets filled with wine from Gaul, olive oil from Spain, and coins stamped with the faces of emperors. Yet, the Roman world stopped at the Irish Sea. No Roman garrison ever conquered the green hills of Ireland. The map of Roman Britain ends in silence, where the water widens, and the empire's roads vanish into mist. After Rome withdrew, new ships appeared along England's eastern and southern shores. The 5th and 6th centuries brought waves of Anglo-Saxon settlers from what is now Germany, Denmark, and the Netherlands. Archaeological sites in East Anglia and Cambridgeshire reveal graves filled with brooches and swords, but also with the bones of outsiders, men, women, and children whose DNA points back to the continent. In some regions, up to 40% of the ancestry today traces to these newcomers. The old elite was replaced, and the language of the land shifted. Vikings followed, first as raiders, then as settlers. From the late 8th century, Norse longships slipped up the rivers and beached on the coasts. York became Jorvik, a bustling Norse market town. Danish law ruled the Danelaw, stretching from the Humber to the Thames. Norse and Danish genes layered over the Anglo-Saxon, especially in the east and north, adding new threads to the English tapestry. Normans arrived in 1066, bringing knights from Normandy and Brittany and weaving fresh continental blood into the ruling class. Over centuries, England's doors stayed open, sometimes by force, often by trade. The result is a patchwork. Romans in the cities, Saxons in the fields, Vikings in the towns, Normans in the castles, each leaving a genetic footprint. Ireland's story runs against this current. The Irish Sea served as a natural moat, muting the impact of each wave. No Roman forts, no Anglo-Saxon villages. Viking fleets founded towns like Dublin and Waterford, but their influence faded quickly beyond the city walls. Norman lords built castles, but their bloodlines rarely seeped into the rural population. The countryside held its own, guarded by kinship and the stubbornness of the land itself. In Ireland, the invaders left their names and their customs, but the DNA of the countryside stayed mostly unchanged. While England became a crossroads, Ireland became a filter. The difference is not just in what arrived, but in what stayed. The data draws its own boundary lines. When geneticists map the DNA of people from England and Ireland onto a principal component analysis plot, the clusters tell a silent story. English samples scatter across the plot, stretching from the southeast up toward Dutch and Danish reference points. The spread is broad. In contrast, Irish samples pull tight, forming a dense endpoint on the Atlantic fringe. There is overlap at the edges, but the heart of each cluster is unmistakable. The people of the British Isles project and the Irish DNA Atlas both confirm the pattern. England's genetic landscape is a patchwork. East Anglia leans toward the continent. Cornwall clusters with ancient Britons. The north carries a shadow of Norse. Ireland, by comparison, is a lattice of micro-clusters, 23 to 60 depending on the method, most distinct in the west. These clusters persist for centuries. Sometimes they track the same surnames in the same valleys. Haplogroup bars deepen the contrast. In Ireland, the Y chromosome marker R1b-L21, brought by the Beaker people, appears in over half of men, the highest frequency anywhere in the world. In England, R1b-L21 competes with continental haplogroups like R1b, U106, and I1, reflecting the repeated influx of outsiders. The numbers are stark. Anglo-Saxon ancestry in central and southern England reaches up to 40%, while in Ireland it hovers near zero. The statistics land quietly but decisively. Two people, both born in the British Isles, can be genetically farther apart than a Spaniard and a Frenchman. The map of DNA does not care about borders. It follows the old migrations, the silent divides left by water and time. English and Irish DNA carry the fingerprints of power, but not always in the way people expect. In England, every major invasion left its mark at the top. When the Anglo-Saxons arrived, genetic studies show a striking pattern. The Y chromosome passed down by men shifted dramatically in central and eastern regions. Up to half of the male lineages in some areas trace back to these newcomers, while the majority of maternal lines remained local. This is the signature of elite replacement. A small group of foreign men, often warriors or rulers, leaving a disproportionate impact on the next generations. The Normans repeated the process centuries later, their bloodlines woven into the aristocracy, not the villages. Each wave rewrote the story of who held power, but the faces of the countryside often stayed the same. Ireland's story is different. The invaders came, but their genetic shadow faded quickly outside the cities and castles. The rural population held on to ancient lineages protected by geography and kinship. Even when Norman lords built strongholds or Vikings founded towns, the DNA of the Irish countryside changed little. The continuity is so strong that some surnames in the West can be traced back 1,000 years, clustering tightly in the same valleys where their ancestors farmed and fished. That deep continuity shaped how identities endured. Yet, when people look in the mirror, they reach for simple answers. Myths persist that dark-haired Irish must descend from Spanish Armada survivors, or that fair English features prove Viking ancestry. The genetic evidence tells a different story. The alleles for red hair, blue eyes, and fair skin spread across these islands long before the Celts or Saxons, carried by ancient farmers and beaker people. Founder effects and isolation amplified some traits in Ireland, while repeated mixing in England diluted others. The real point is that pigmentation recycles through deep time. Your reflection is a snapshot. Your DNA is a record of millennia. One final caution. Genetics is a map of probabilities, not a passport. Clusters and averages reveal patterns, but individuals can fall anywhere on the spectrum. Overlap happens. No DNA test can sum up a nation or a person in a single result. Genetics redraws boundaries that maps can't show. As DNA testing becomes routine, identity becomes a choice shaped by evidence, not legend. The real divide isn't water or war, but how we understand who we are. What does your DNA say about the story you claim? Hey there! If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and leave a comment telling me what you'd like to see covered next. This was Patrick, and as always, thanks for watching.